Danny Carter wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the massive viewing port. Beyond the reinforced glass, stars stretched endlessly across the black. Sentinel's Edge Station floated at the border of human and alien territory, a trading post where dozens of species came to do business. For most people, working here meant opportunity. For Danny, it meant being reminded every single day how small humans really were. He stood 5 feet 6 inches tall. Back on Earth, that was short but normal. Out here, surrounded by aliens who towered over him, he felt like a child. The Vorathians were the worst. They walked through the station corridors like giants, their muscled frames reaching 8 or 9 feet high. Their skin had a gray-blue tone, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. They were hunters, warriors, legends across the galaxy, and they terrified most people. Danny wanted to be one of them. "You're insane," Kate Morrison said, appearing beside him. She was his supervisor, a stern woman in her 40s who ran the maintenance department. "You know that, right?" Danny smiled. "Probably. The Vorathians don't take outsiders into their hunt packs. They barely tolerate us being in the same room." Kate crossed her arms. "And even if they did, you'd get yourself killed in the first training session." "Maybe," Danny said. "But I have to try." Kate sighed. She'd had this conversation with him a dozen times. Danny had been obsessed with the Vorathians since he arrived at the station 2 years ago. He studied their culture, learned their language, and watched how they moved. He knew it was crazy. He also knew he couldn't stop himself. The announcement chimed through the station. A Vorathian delegation had docked. Danny's heart raced. This was his chance. He found them in the main plaza an hour later. There were 5 of them, each one massive and intimidating. They wore dark armor that seemed to absorb light, and carried weapons that looked like they could cut through steel. The leader was the biggest, a scarred warrior with silver markings on his face. His name was Kael'Zar, a huntmaster known across 3 star systems. Danny approached slowly. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself forward. The Vorathians noticed him immediately. Their glowing eyes tracked his movement, like predators watching prey. "Honored Huntmaster," Danny said in Vorathian. His accent was rough but understandable. "I request the right of petition." The plaza went silent. Everyone stopped to watch. Humans, aliens, traders, all of them stared. Kael'Zar looked down at Danny. The height difference was absurd. The Vorathian could have reached down and picked Danny up with one hand. "You speak our tongue," Kael'Zar said. His voice was deep, rumbling like thunder. "That is amusing." The other Vorathians laughed. It wasn't cruel laughter exactly, more like adults watching a dog try to walk on its hind legs. "I wish to join your hunt pack," Danny said. His voice didn't shake. The laughter stopped. Kael'Zar tilted his head, studying Danny like he was some strange insect. "You," the huntmaster said slowly. "Yes. Little prey thing, do you understand what you ask?" One of the other Vorathians stepped forward. "Our warriors train from birth. We hunt beasts that would eat you in one bite. Our weakest cub is stronger than your strongest soldier." "I understand," Danny said. "Then you understand this is impossible." Kael'Zar turned away, dismissing him, but one Vorathian didn't move. He stood at the back of the group, taller even than Kael'Zar. His armor was different, marked with symbols Danny recognized as belonging to an alpha hunter. His name was Vorkan, and his reputation was legendary. He'd led successful hunts on 12 worlds and never lost a pack member. Vorkan stared at Danny with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "Why?" Vorkan asked. "What?" Danny blinked. "Why do you wish to join?" The alpha hunter moved forward, his footsteps silent despite his size. "You are human. Soft, weak, slow. Your kind barely survived long enough to reach the stars. Why would you seek to walk among hunters?" Danny met his gaze. It took everything he had not to look away. Because hunting isn't just about strength, Danny said. My people survived on a world that tried to kill us every day. We didn't have claws or armor or natural weapons. We survived because we were smart, because we adapted, because we never gave up. He paused. That's what makes a real hunter. The plaza was completely silent now. Vorkon's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Interesting, the Alpha Hunter said. Vorkon, surely you don't consider, Kael'Zar started. A sharp alarm cut through the air. Red lights flashed across the plaza. Danny's communication device buzzed urgently. He glanced at it, and his blood went cold. Pressure leak in the eastern docking arm, he said quickly. Section 12. The sensors haven't registered anything. Kate's voice crackled through the device. They will, in about 30 seconds, Danny said. He was already moving toward the emergency panel. The composite seal in that section has microfractures. I've been meaning to replace it, but the station's alert system blared. Automated voices announced the pressure leak. In Section 12. Exactly where Danny said it would be. Danny hit the emergency controls, sealing off the section before the leak could spread. The alarms quieted. Crisis averted. When he turned around, Vorkon was standing right behind him. Danny nearly jumped out of his skin. How did you know? The Alpha Hunter asked. I felt it, Danny said. The vibration pattern changed, just slightly. You learn to notice things when you work maintenance. Vorkon studied him for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, the Alpha Hunter smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. It showed too many teeth. Kael'Zar, Vorkon said without looking away from Danny. I invoke the ancient law. I claim right of trial for this one. The Huntmaster's eyes widened. You cannot be serious. I am always serious. Vorkon finally looked away from Danny to face his superior. He has awareness. He notices what others miss. These are Hunter's gifts, even in a prey thing body. He'll die. Perhaps. Vorkon looked back at Danny. Or perhaps he will surprise us. Either way, we will learn something. Danny's heart hammered in his chest. He had no idea what he'd just gotten himself into. But there was no backing down now. Do you accept? Human? Vorkon asked. The trial is harsh. Many Vorathian youths fail. You will almost certainly fail. You may die. Do you still wish to try? Danny thought about Kate's warnings, about how crazy this was, about every reason he should say no. I accept, he said. Vorkon's smile widened. Then prepare yourself, Danny Carter. In 3 days, we leave for Carrick Prime. Your trial begins there. If you survive 7 days, while my hunters track you, you earn the right to train. If you fail, the Alpha Hunter shrugged. Well, at least you will have tried. End quote. End quote. The Vorathians left the plaza, their business concluded. Danny stood there, shaking slightly, wondering what he'd just agreed to. Kate appeared beside him, her face pale. You're really going to do this? Yeah, Danny said. I really am. You're going to die on some alien jungle world, and I'm going to have to file the paperwork. Danny laughed. It was a slightly hysterical sound. Probably. But Kate, they said yes. They actually said yes. Kate looked at him and shook her head. But there was something almost like pride in her eyes. Then you better survive, you idiot, she said. Because I'm not training a replacement. Carrick Prime was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The jungle stretched endlessly in every direction, thick with vegetation that glowed faintly in the dim light of the planet's red sun. Strange calls echoed through the trees, sounds that Danny's brain couldn't quite process as animal or something else entirely. He stood in a clearing, wearing light armor that the Vorathians had provided. It fit poorly, designed for bodies much larger than his. Vorkon loomed over him, explaining the rules one final time. 7 days, the Alpha Hunter said. 3 of our young warriors will hunt you. They are trained but inexperienced, chosen to give you a slim chance of survival. You may use any method you wish to evade them. There are no rules, no restrictions. Survival is the only goal. Danny nodded. His mouth was too dry to speak. If you are caught, you will be exiled from Vorathian space forever. If you survive. Vorkon paused. We will see. 3 young Vorathians stepped forward. They were smaller than Vorkon, probably only 7 feet tall, but they still dwarfed Danny. Their eyes gleamed with excitement and contempt. To them, this was a game, an easy hunt. The trial begins at sunset, Vorkon said. You have until then to prepare. I suggest you run far and fast, little human. Danny watched the sun slowly descend toward the horizon. He had maybe 2 hours. His mind raced, trying to remember everything Amy Rodriguez had told him before he left. Amy was a xenobiologist who'd studied Vorathian culture for years. They're ambush predators, by nature. They read endowment, she'd explained. But their society glorifies direct confrontation. They'll track you, corner you, and try to face you head-on. Use that against them. Ben Harper had been less helpful. His friend had just stared at him through the video call and said, You know you're crazy, right? Please don't die. Danny pushed those thoughts away and focused. 2 hours. He needed to think. He didn't run. That's what they expected. Instead, he stayed in the clearing and studied his surroundings. The jungle was dense, but had patterns. Water flowed downhill, animals made trails, and certain plants grew in specific conditions. Danny had grown up on a frontier colony where survival meant reading the environment. He found a stream and followed it upstream, stepping on rocks to avoid leaving tracks. The young Vorathians would have superior tracking skills, but he could make it harder. He gathered mud and rubbed it on his skin and armor, masking his scent. He found sharp stones and tied them to low branches, creating makeshift alarms that would rattle if anything large passed through. By sunset, Danny had created a rough network of early warning systems around a small cave he'd found. It wasn't much, but it would help him know when they were coming. The first night was the hardest. Every sound made him jump. He couldn't light a fire, couldn't make noise, could barely move. He sat in the darkness and listened to the jungle breathe around him. On the second day, he found their trail. The young Vorathians weren't being subtle. They crashed through the jungle like they owned it, which they probably did. Danny followed at a distance, learning their patterns. They moved in a triangle formation, covering ground efficiently but predictably. On the third day, Danny set his first trap. He found a natural game trail that the Vorathians were using and dug a shallow pit, covering it with branches and leaves. It wouldn't hurt them, but it would slow them down and make them more careful. More importantly, it would make them angry. He heard the crash and the cursing an hour later. One of them had fallen into it. Danny allowed himself a small smile. On the 4th day, they changed tactics. They split up, trying to box him in. Danny stayed ahead of them by climbing. Vorathians were strong, but heavy. The trees here were tall and thin, perfect for someone light and desperate. He spent the night in the canopy, tied to a branch with vine fiber he'd woven together. Below, he could hear them searching, frustrated and confused. Where had the little prey thing gone? On the 5th day, everything changed. Danny realized he was tired of running. These Vorathians thought hunting was about being bigger and stronger. He needed to teach them differently. He started tracking them instead. It wasn't hard. They were loud, confident, and didn't expect their prey to turn around. Danny followed the closest one for hours, learning his patterns. The young Vorathian stopped to drink from a stream at regular intervals. He favored his left side when turning. He scanned the ground and middle height, but rarely looked up. Danny waited until the Vorathian stopped to rest. Then he dropped a heavy seed pod from directly above. hitting the warrior on the shoulder. The Vorathian spun, snarling, searching for the threat. But Danny was already gone, moving through the canopy like a ghost. He did it again an hour later. By evening, the young Vorathian was jumpy, constantly looking over his shoulder. He called out to his companions, his voice tight with frustration. Danny left signs. He carved marks on trees where they could see them. He arranged stones in patterns. He wanted them to know he was watching them. On the 6th day, the 3 hunters regrouped. Danny watched from a distance as they argued. One wanted to continue the pursuit. Another suggested they spread out further. The third one, the one Danny had been harassing, looked nervous. They decided to set a trap of their own. They found an open area and waited, trying to lure Danny into attacking. Danny circled around them instead. He found their supplies, their water, their equipment. He didn't take it. That would be too obvious. Instead, he moved everything 3 feet to the left, just enough that they'd know someone had been there. When they returned and saw what he'd done, one of them actually roared in frustration. On the 7th day, Danny was exhausted. His body ached, he'd barely slept, and he was running on pure adrenaline. But he was still free, still uncaught. The final confrontation came at midday. The 3 young Vorathians cornered him in a rocky area where the trees thinned out. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They approached, slowly, triumphant. "You ran well, little human," one of them said. "But the hunt ends now." Danny had one trick left. He'd spent the morning preparing, using every bit of knowledge he had. The rocky area was unstable, sitting on loose scree that shifted with weight. As they approached, Danny grabbed a branch and swung hard at a specific boulder. The impact was nothing, barely a tap, but it was enough. The rocks shifted, then slid, then cascaded down in a controlled avalanche. Danny had positioned himself safely to the side. The Vorathians weren't so lucky. One of them went down, his leg pinned under a heavy stone. The other 2 rushed to help their companion. Danny could have run then, could have left them. But Amy's words echoed in his mind about Vorathian culture, about honor and pack loyalty. He stayed. He helped them lift the rock, freeing the trapped hunter. The Vorathian stared at him, in shock. "Why?" the injured one asked. "Because leaving you would be wrong," Danny said simply. "I wanted to prove I could survive your hunt. I did. But I'm not going to let someone die to prove a point." The 3 young Vorathians looked at each other. Something passed between them. An unspoken communication. A horn sounded in the distance. 7 days. The trial was over. Vorkon appeared an hour later, moving through the jungle with silent grace. He looked at the scene, at the rock slide, at his 3 warriors, standing with the small human. "Explain," he commanded. The injured Vorathian spoke, describing the 7 days. How Danny had evaded them, trapped them, harassed them, and finally outsmarted them. How he'd helped instead of running when he had the chance. Vorkon listened without expression. When the tale was finished, he turned to Danny. "You did not fight them." "No," Danny admitted. "I couldn't win a fight. You used tricks, deception, methods we would consider questionable. I used what I had," Danny said. He was too tired to be diplomatic. "You have strength and claws and instincts. I have my brain and my hands and my stubbornness. We both hunt. We just hunt differently." Vorkon stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, the alpha hunter's mouth curved into that too wide smile. "You have passed," he said. The training compound on Vorathian Prime was not designed for humans. Everything was too big, too heavy, too hard. The sleeping platforms were 6 feet off the ground. The training weapons weighed more than Danny's entire pack. Even the food portions were massive, designed for warriors who needed thousands of calories to fuel their huge frames. Danny had been there for 3 months, and every day was a struggle. Again, The training master, a scarred Vorathian named Rekthar, bellowed the command. Your form is weak, human. Like a youngling, Danny lifted the training spear again. His arms shook with effort. The weapon was designed for Vorathian strength, and holding it at the proper angle felt like lifting a tree trunk. He thrust forward, trying to maintain the precise form that Rekthar demanded. The training master knocked the spear aside with casual ease. Pathetic. Again. Quote, around the training yard, other Vorathian warriors watched. Some looked amused. Others looked disgusted that a human was allowed to train among them. None looked impressed. Danny reset his stance and tried again. By the time Rekthar dismissed him, Danny's entire body screamed in pain. He limped to the washroom, his muscles burning. In the mirror, he looked like death warmed over. Bruises covered his arms and chest. His hands were calloused and bleeding in places. But he was still here, still trying. You're making progress, a voice said behind him. Danny turned to find Talrix, one of the younger Vorathians. He was barely 6 feet tall, small by his species standards, which made him an outcast among his own people. He and Danny had formed an unlikely friendship. Progress? Danny laughed bitterly. I can barely lift the training weapons, but you can lift them, Talrix pointed out. 3 months ago, you couldn't, and your tracking exercises are better than half the warriors here. Rekthar won't admit it, but you excel at reading terrain. Fat lot of good that does me when I can't even complete the basic strength trials, Danny said. Talrix tilted his head. You think like a human. You want to beat us at our own methods. But Vorkhan didn't accept you because you could become Vorathian. He accepted you because you think differently. Before Danny could respond, alarms blared throughout the compound. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Warriors immediately moved with practiced efficiency, grabbing weapons and forming groups. Vorkhan's voice echoed through the communication system. Hunt pack, assemble in the main hall. We have received a distress call. Danny followed Talrix to the gathering area. Vorkhan stood on a raised platform, his presence commanding immediate silence. Behind him, a holographic display showed a distant mining colony called Outpost Meridian. The colony has been attacked, Vorkhan said. Unknown hostiles. Last transmission showed heavy casualties. We depart immediately to investigate and eliminate the threat. The hunt pack roared their approval. This was what they trained for. This was their purpose. Danny Carter, Vorkhan's voice cut through the noise. You will remain here. This is not a training exercise. Every eye in the room turned to Danny. He felt the weight of their stares, the mixture of relief and contempt. Of course, the weak human would stay behind. Danny wanted to argue, but Vorkhan's expression made it clear the decision was final. The hunt pack departed within the hour. Danny watched their ship, the Razor's Edge, lift off from the compound. He stood in the empty training yard, fists clenched in frustration. They're protecting you. Kate Morrison's voice came through his personal communicator. She'd been checking in regularly from Sentinel's Edge. You should be grateful. You should be grateful. I passed the trial, Danny said. You earned the right to train, not to die on your first real mission. Kate's tone softened. Danny, I know you want to prove yourself, but sometimes staying alive is more important than proving a point. Danny didn't answer. He was already moving toward the landing bay. The Razor's Edge was fast, but not fast enough to notice a small cargo pod that attached itself to the hull before departure. Danny had learned the ship's systems during his training. He knew where the sensors had blind spots. He knew which maintenance pods were rarely checked. It was cramped, cold, and terrifying, but he was going. The journey took 2 days. Danny survived on emergency rations and recycled air. When the ship finally docked at Outpost Meridian, he waited until the hunt pack had disembarked before slipping out. The colony was a nightmare. Buildings were torn open like tin cans. Strange organic material covered the walls, pulsing with sickly light. The air smelled wrong, chemical and rotten at the same time. Danny moved carefully through the destroyed corridors, following the sounds of combat. He found the hunt pack pinned down in the central hub, surrounded by creatures that made his blood run cold. They looked like insects, but massive, each one the size of a small vehicle. They had too many legs, too many eyes, and mandibles that dripped acidic venom. They moved with coordinated precision, working together like a single organism. The Vorathians fought with their usual ferocity, but they were losing. These creatures adapted to their tactics in real time, learning and countering every move. Danny watched from a hidden position as Kael'Zar, the hunt master, took a savage hit that sent him sprawling. Vorkon roared and charged forward, protecting his fallen superior. But even the alpha hunter was being overwhelmed. Danny's hands shook. He should have stayed back. Kate was right. What could he possibly do against these monsters? Then he noticed something. The creatures moved in patterns. They responded to each other, adjusting their positions based on pheromone signals he could smell even from his hiding spot. They were a hive mind, coordinated and intelligent. And hive minds had weaknesses. Danny activated his communicator, hoping the Vorathians would hear him over the sounds of battle. Vorkon, this is Danny. Don't kill me for stowing away, but I think I know how to beat these things. There was a long pause. Then Vorkon's voice, tight with anger and something else, maybe relief. Speak quickly, human. They're hive-minded. They coordinate through chemical signals and vibration. If we disrupt their communication, they'll lose their tactical advantage. How? Vorkon demanded. Danny looked around frantically. The colony had industrial systems, mining equipment, chemical processors. Give me 5 minutes. Keep them contained in the hub. Don't let them spread out. He ran before Vorkon could respond or forbid him. Danny's knowledge of station maintenance suddenly became his greatest weapon. He knew how these colonies worked, how their systems connected. He reached the Environmental Control Center and started overriding safeties. The mining colony used various chemicals for ore processing. Some of them were extremely potent. Designed to break down rock, they would also break down pheromone signals. Danny rerouted the ventilation system, flooding the hub with a mixture that would scramble the creature's communications without killing the Vorathians. He hoped. He wasn't entirely sure about the second part. The effect was immediate. The creature's coordinated movements fell apart. They started attacking each other, confused and disoriented. The Vorathians, equipped with sealed armor, pressed their advantage. Danny watched from the control center as the battle turned. The hunt pack was brutal and efficient. Within minutes, the creatures were retreating into the lower levels. Vorkon's voice crackled over the communicator. Danny, report to the hub. Now. Danny made his way back slowly, expecting fury. When he arrived, the entire hunt pack was staring at him. Vorkon stood at the center, his armor covered in acidic burns and alien blood. You disobeyed direct orders, the Alpha Hunter said. Yes, Danny admitted. There was no point denying it. You stowed away on a combat mission. Yes. You risked your life and ours with your presence. Danny swallowed hard. Yes. Vorkon stepped forward until he loomed over Danny. Then, to everyone's shock, he placed a massive hand on Danny's shoulder. It was surprisingly gentle. And you saved us, Vorkon said. Using methods we would never have considered. Methods that worked when our strength failed. He looked around at the other warriors. This is why I accepted him. Not to make him Vorathian, but to learn what humans can teach us. Talrik stepped forward. The creatures have retreated to the lower levels. There are more of them. Many more. Vorkon nodded grimly. Then, we continue the hunt. But we do it differently this time. He looked at Danny. We do it the human way. The lower levels of Outpost Meridian were a maze of mining tunnels and processing chambers. The creatures, which Amy Rodriguez had identified as scrics from the samples Danny transmitted, had made this territory their own. The walls pulsed with their organic growths, and the air grew thicker the deeper they went. Kael'Zar was badly wounded but stable. 2 other Vorathians were injured enough that they couldn't continue. The hunt pack was down to 8 warriors, plus Danny, and somewhere in these depths, according to Amy's analysis, was a queen. Kill her, and the hive would collapse. We cannot fight them directly, Vorkon addressed the group. His admission clearly pained him. They adapt too quickly to our tactics. We need a new approach. All eyes turned to Danny. He felt the weight of their expectation and tried not to panic. Humans don't fight fair, Danny said slowly. When something is bigger and stronger than us, we don't meet it head-on. We use the environment. We set traps. We make the battlefield work for us instead of against us. One of the older warriors, Garhesh, growled. You speak of cowardice. I speak of survival. Danny shot back. Your way is honorable. It's also getting you killed. Vorkon raised his hand for silence. Continue, Danny. Danny pulled up the colony schematics on a portable display. This is a mining colony. That means industrial equipment, chemical storage, and structural weaknesses we can exploit. The scrics are using the tunnel system to move around, but those same tunnels can become death traps. He pointed to several locations. Here, and here are support columns. If we collapse them strategically, we can funnel the scrics into specific areas. Then we use the mining explosives and chemical storage to hit them all at once. We're warriors, not demolition experts, Talrix pointed out. No, Danny said. But I am a maintenance technician who's been working on stations for 5 years. I know how to make things break in very specific ways. Vorkon studied the schematics. And the queen? She'll be in the deepest, most protected area. While the hive is distracted by our traps, a small team goes in and takes her out. Danny looked at Vorkon. That part is going to require your kind of fighting. Direct, brutal. The Alpha Hunter's expression shifted into something that might have been approval. You would have us fight like humans, then finish like Vorathians? Exactly. Vorkon looked around at his warriors. Who objects? Silence. Even Garhesh said nothing, though he didn't look happy. Then we proceed, Vorkon decided. Danny, you lead the preparation. Talrix, assist him. The rest of us will provide security and handle the final assault. The next hours were the most intense of Danny's life. He moved through the colony's industrial sections, identifying weak points and gathering materials. Talrix helped him rig explosives to support beams, carefully calculating blast radii and collapse patterns. Ben Harper, monitoring from orbit, provided technical support through Danny's communicator. His friend said, but his voice carried admiration. Absolutely insane. But the math checks out. Good to know I won't just kill everyone by accident, Danny muttered, connecting wires to detonators. I give it 60-40 odds, Ben said cheerfully. 60% you take out the scrics. 40% you bring the whole colony down on your heads. I'll take those odds. They set up false pheromone trails using captured scrics chemical signatures mixed with the colony's industrial compounds. The trails led the creatures exactly where Danny wanted them, away from the Queen's chamber and into the prepared kill zones. The scrics took the bait. They were intelligent, but they relied on their hive mind, on the collective intelligence that had made them so dangerous. That same collective intelligence made them predictable once you understood their patterns. Danny watched from a safe position as hundreds of scrics flooded into the central processing area, following the chemical trails. They thought they were hunting. They had no idea they were being herded. Now, Danny said quietly. Talrix triggered the first set of explosives. Support columns crumbled. The ceiling began to collapse, but slowly, in a controlled cascade that Danny had carefully planned. The scrics tried to retreat, but found their escape routes blocked by more collapses. Then the chemical storage tanks ruptured. Industrial solvents mixed with mining acids created a toxic cloud that dissolved organic matter on contact. The Scrix's organic growths melted away. The creatures themselves began to break down, their exoskeletons failing. It wasn't honorable. It wasn't glorious. It was efficient and brutal and terrifying. And it worked. The hive's coordination collapsed as hundreds of drones died simultaneously. The remaining Scrix fell into chaos. The Queen's chamber is clear, Vorkon reported. We move now. Danny wanted to stay behind. Let the warriors handle the final assault. But Vorkon grabbed his arm. You started this, human. You finish it with us. They moved through the tunnels in tight formation. The deeper they went, the more organic the walls became. The Scrix Queen had been transforming the colony into something alien and wrong. They found her in what used to be the main mining chamber. She was massive, easily 3 times the size of a regular Scrix. Her body bloated with eggs. Dozens of smaller Scrix surrounded her. The last defenders of the hive. The Vorathians didn't hesitate. This was their kind of fight. They charged forward with weapons ready, roaring their war cries. Danny stayed back, watching the warriors fight the way they were meant to fight. No tricks now. No clever tactics. Just strength, skill, and ferocity. The Vorathians were magnificent, but the Queen was stronger than they expected. Her defenders fell, but she was armored, fast, and filled with desperate fury. She caught one warrior with her mandibles and threw him across the chamber. Another took a blast of acidic spray that ate through his armor. Vorkon faced her directly, his blade dancing in complex patterns. He was winning, slowly, cutting away her defenses. But Danny saw what the Alpha Hunter didn't, too focused on the enemy before him. Another Scrix, larger than the defenders, emerged from a side tunnel. It was moving to attack Vorkon from behind. Danny didn't think. He grabbed a mining tool, one of the massive drills designed for breaking rock, and activated it. The tool was heavy, designed for Vorathian strength, but adrenaline made him strong. He charged forward and drove the spinning drill into the Scrix's side. The creature shrieked and turned on him. Mandibles snapping, Danny held on desperately as the drill bit deeper, the tool's vibration nearly tearing his arms from their sockets. Vorkon spun, saw the threat, and understood instantly. He turned back to the Queen and drove his blade through her skull with a single, powerful thrust. The Queen's death scream echoed through the chamber. Every remaining Scrix stopped moving simultaneously. Their hive mind collapsed. Without the Queen's coordination, they were just mindless insects, twitching and dying. The Scrix that Danny had attacked fell, its body going still. Danny released the drill and collapsed, his entire body shaking with exhaustion. Vorkon walked over and looked down at him. The Alpha Hunter had acid burns on his armor, and green blood spattered across his face. He looked terrifying and magnificent. You saved my life, little human, Vorkon said. Danny couldn't even respond. He just nodded weakly. The Alpha Hunter extended his hand. When Danny took it, Vorkon pulled him to his feet with surprising gentleness. The hunt is complete, Vorkon announced to his warriors. The hive is broken. The colony is saved. He looked around at his pack, at the warriors who had fought beside a human, using human tactics. And we have learned something valuable today. Strength alone is not always enough. Sometimes we must adapt. We must think like our enemies. We must learn from those different from us. He placed his hand on Danny's shoulder again. This human has proven his worth. Not by becoming Vorathian, but by showing us a new way to hunt, by being willing to do what must be done. Honor or no honor. The warriors stirred. Some nodded. Others looked uncertain. But none challenged Vorkon's words. They emerged from the lower levels to find the colony's survivors, humans and aliens both, staring in shock at the victorious hunt pack. Behind them walked a small human, barely reaching the warriors' chests, covered in alien blood and grime. Danny just wanted to sleep for about 3 days. But when he saw the looks of hope on the survivors' faces, he straightened his spine and walked with his head high. They had won. Against all odds, using methods the Varathians would have called dishonorable weeks ago, they had won, and everything was about to change. The ceremony took place 3 weeks after the battle at Outpost Meridian. Those weeks had been a blur of activity. The news of the Hunt Pack's victory spread through the Galactic Coalition like wildfire. A human, fighting alongside Varathians, using tactics that saved the entire colony. It was unprecedented. Danny had been bombarded with messages. Some called him a hero. Others, particularly certain human politicians, accused him of abandoning human methods and becoming an alien's pet. Ben Harper had laughed at that one and told Danny to ignore the idiots who'd never left their comfortable offices. Kate Morrison had sent a simple message that meant more than all the others combined. "I'm proud of you. Don't let it go to your head." Now Danny stood in the great hall of the Varathian homeworld, surrounded by hundreds of warriors and dignitaries from across the galaxy. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to stand straight. Vorkon stood at the center of the hall, his presence commanding absolute silence. Beside him, Kael'Zar had recovered enough to attend, though he still moved stiffly from his injuries. The entire Hunt Pack was present, dressed in their ceremonial armor. "We gather today," Vorkon's voice echoed through the hall, "to recognize an achievement that many thought impossible. A human passed the trial of blood and shadow. A human fought beside the Hunt Pack and proved himself in battle. A human saved Varathian lives using methods we did not understand but cannot deny." He gestured for Danny to approach. Danny's heart hammered as he walked forward, aware of every eye on him. "Danny Carter," Vorkon continued, "you came to us as an outsider. You were weak by our standards, small, soft. Many laughed at you. Many thought you would die within days." Danny could hear the murmurs of agreement from the crowd. He tried not to let it bother him. "But you did not die," Vorkon said. "You survived because you refused to fight our way. You survived because you understood something we had forgotten. There are many paths to victory, many ways to hunt. Strength is important, yes, but intelligence, creativity, and determination are equally valuable." The Alpha Hunter drew a ceremonial blade from his belt. It was ancient, marked with symbols that Danny had learned to recognize as belonging to Vorkon's bloodline. "In our culture," Vorkon said, "names are not given at birth. They are earned through deeds. You were born Danny Carter, a human name from a human world. But you have earned something more. Minsley, our earned pard," he held the blade up for all to see, then cut his own palm. Green blood welled up, dripping onto the stone floor. "Extend your hand," Vorkon commanded. Danny did, trying not to shake. The blade was sharp. The cut was quick and precise, barely even painful. His red blood mixed with Vorkon's green on the floor, a pool of 2 colors becoming one. "Blood calls to blood," Vorkon said, speaking in formal Varathian now. "Pack calls to pack. I name you Kethrin, which in your tongue means small shadow. You walk unseen where we cannot. You strike where we do not expect. You are different from us, and that difference is your strength." He pressed his cut palm against Danny's. The contact was warm, almost burning. "You are no longer prey," Vorkon declared. "You are no longer outsider. You are kin. You are pack. You are Varathian in spirit, if not in body." The hall erupted. Some warriors roared approval. Others stamped their feet in the traditional show of respect. A few looked scandalized. But they were the minority. Talrik stepped forward, along with the 3 young warriors who had hunted Danny during his trial. They each cut their palms and pressed them against Danny's, one after another, adding their blood to the mixture. "We name you kin," they said in unison. "We name you pack. We name you pack." The ceremony continued with traditional songs and rituals that Danny barely understood. But he understood the important part. He was one of them now. Not human, pretending to be Vorathian, but something new. A bridge between two cultures. Afterward, there was a feast. Danny sat among the warriors, listening to their stories and sharing his own. Garhesh, the warrior who had called him a coward, approached with a cup of Vorathian drink. "I was wrong about you, human," Garhesh said gruffly. "You fight strangely, and your methods are uncomfortable to watch. But they work. And you have courage. That matters." It was probably the closest thing to an apology Danny would ever get from him. He accepted it gracefully. Later, when the celebration had died down, Danny found himself on a balcony overlooking the Vorathian capital. The city stretched out below, beautiful and alien under the light of 3 moons. Vorkon joined him, moving with his usual silent grace. "How do you feel?" the Alpha Hunter asked. "Confused," Danny admitted. "Honored. Terrified. All of it at once." Vorkon's laugh was a low rumble. "Good. That means you understand the weight of what you've been given. Too much confidence would make you stupid." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "You know this changes things," Vorkon said. "The galaxy is watching. Other species will wonder if they too can bridge the gap between their cultures and others. Some humans will be angry that you've joined us. Some Vorathians will never accept you. No matter what I say." "I know," Danny said. "And yet you don't regret it?" Danny thought about the trial on Carrick Prime, about learning to hunt and be hunted. He thought about the battle at Outpost Meridian, about fighting alongside warriors who had become his family. He thought about standing here now, marked with the blood of the hunt pack, carrying a name earned through deeds. "No," he said firmly. "No regrets." Vorkon nodded as if this was the answer he expected. "Then, you truly are kin. Because a Vorathian never regrets the path they choose. Only the enemies they fail to hunt." Danny's communicator buzzed. Messages were flooding in from across known space. Amy Rodriguez, congratulating him and asking for details about the ceremony for her research. Ben Harper, sending a crude joke about Danny being too good for his human friends now. Kate Morrison, with a simple, thumbs-up emoji, but there was one message that caught his attention. It was from the Galactic Coalition Council itself. They wanted to meet with him, discuss the implications of a human joining a Vorathian hunt pack, explore possibilities for deeper cultural exchange. "They want to use you," Vorkon observed, reading over his shoulder without shame. "Politicians always do. Let them try," Danny said. "Maybe some good can come from it. Maybe more humans and Vorathians can learn to work together. Maybe we can teach other species that different doesn't mean incompatible." All. An optimistic view. A human view, Danny corrected with a smile. Vorkon's expression softened into something almost paternal. "This is just the beginning, you know. You've proven yourself once. Now you must prove yourself again and again. The galaxy is vast, and there are always new hunts, new challenges, new enemies." Danny looked out at the alien city, at the stars beyond, at the infinite possibilities stretching before him. "Good," he said. "I didn't come this far just to stop." The Alpha Hunter placed his massive hand on Danny's shoulder one more time. "Then tomorrow, we begin your real training. No more allowances for your small size. No more holding back. You are kin now, Catherine. And kin are expected to excel." Danny groaned. "Can I at least finish celebrating first?" "No." Despite his words, Vorkon was smiling that fierce Vorathian smile. Danny smiled back, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the ceremonial drink. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a small maintenance technician being laughed at in a trading station plaza, to standing on the Vorathian homeworld as a named member of the hunt pack. It seemed impossible. It probably was impossible, but he'd done it anyway. Far above, A ship departed from the orbital station. It carried news of today's events, spreading the story across the galaxy. The story of how they laughed at the small Earthborn, right up until their alpha hunter named him kin. How a human proved that strength came in many forms, and that the best hunters were the ones who never stopped adapting. Danny watched the ship's light disappear into the stars and thought about his old dream, the one that had seemed so foolish. He'd wanted to be a warrior, to prove that humans belonged among the galaxy's elite. He'd done that. But more importantly, he'd learned that being human was enough. That his methods, his thinking, his very differences were not weaknesses to overcome but strengths to embrace. The galaxy was watching now, watching to see what this small human would do next, watching to see if others could follow his path, watching to see if old boundaries could be crossed and new alliances formed. Let them watch, Danny thought. Let them see what happens when you stop laughing and start listening. When you stop seeing differences as obstacles and start seeing them as opportunities. He was Kethrin of the Hunt Pack now. Small Shadow. The human who walked among giants and taught them that sometimes the smallest hunter casts the longest shadow. And this, he knew with absolute certainty, was only the beginning. The real hunt was just starting.